Just bring her in. So
Teresa, what we could do is we can tweak them
I gotcha.
a little bit.
I gotcha.
yeah.
Because we normally just talk about them, so
Right.
that's why I was wondering.
So why don't we start with our Say Something protocol of our standards, and we were looking at 2.20 as our standard for unpacking.
Well, I noticed when Tony and I were looking into the unit and looking at the third grade standards, it's very important that the kids be able to extend a pattern.
And I think knowing the difference between extending a pattern and a growing pattern.
Yes.
Because when I looked into the third grade SOL, that was one of the things that students needed more support in, is especially with a growing pattern.
Yep.
And in terms of a foundation, making sure that they have a good place to start from, definitely, make sure they have a solid grounding in being able to identify, what a pattern is, and how important it would be for the teacher to model in the beginning. That's critical, so.
Model what a pattern is, and I think also as we get deeper into it, like modeling your thinking about describing the pattern. That's not something they have to do now, but in third grade, they will also have to describe the pattern, so we can start to model that thinking of describing the pattern.
Well, I think it goes back to the kindergarten where they have to identify the unit, which means the stem of it. So like if it's a repeating pattern, what's the unit? What's the beginning part? What's the stem of it? So you could see it. And if it's a growing pattern, what's the beginning part? So they can see how that beginning part is growing. So identifying that common unit in the front.
I also think with looking at this patterns, because I took a look at the assessment, and it goes back to that fluency of it, because a lot of the patterns on the assessment go backwards.
That's
So
what I
it's
was
being
gonna
able to go forwards and go backwards and go both directions, and that understanding that it's just a different way of looking at numbers.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. I was going to say that I think something that would be really challenging is, especially with the ESOL, is a growing pattern can also be numbers decreasing.
Right.
And
Right, exactly.
and I also thought that it might be challenging. I think they do have to describe the pattern.
Yeah, they do,
and
actually.
putting that oral language and having them communicate and using the vocabulary.
When Carlos and I went to the Math Connects and we looked at our math units, we looked at this one, which we hadn't gotten to yet, and they told us that it used to be in Unit 3 with the even and odd, but they made it completely separate, and it's because it's looking at it completely differently that they wanted to really make sure that the kids understand it, so that they're not memorizing it anymore, and that they have to apply that it is counting by twos, but it's counting like by twos backwards, like
Right.
Brooke said. And so they really want to make sure that the kids understand what they're doing
I'm
instead
happy
of just saying 2, 4, 6, 8.
Right.
I'm happy you brought that up, because I was going to say that how in the unit guide, they did incorporate 2.4 in it, which is the skip counting, and they put skip counting patterns. So they want you to get it as a pattern. It is a growing pattern when you skip count. It's a growing pattern, so.
I like the unit because it takes in, I looked at the strand, and it takes in the visual, the kinesthetic, because it's a lot of introducing it. They're using their body
Yes.
a lot, and that's starting at the basic one for our lower kids. Just like it's a clap, 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 with the growing and the repeating pattern. So it's going to take in a lot of body movement, which will help them to transfer it to making patterns.
And I know we'll get to it later, but there's that ESS lesson where it's the physical
Yes, the
activities.
ESS lessons that you added. It's a lot of, it's not doing any numbers as yet or any writing, it's using the body. And that helps a lot.
So what I hear you saying is really starting with that kinesthetic movement is going to help them make connections with what they learned in first grade, which is much more geometric patterns.
There's something I want to see here, and that caught my attention when I was reading this thing. They're talking about not only pattern, numeral pattern, but also with shape.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
But not only the shape, like having the shapes in there, but rotation.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that is
Yep.
even like something like to think how are the students are going to to face that, because they are going to need some spatial
Understanding,
reasoning,
right.
Yeah.
to know
Spatial
that
reasoning,
kids
exactly.
moving around.
And then
That's a
also,
great observation.
too, once again, focusing on tables, how to read a table, because even when we're doing the geometry unit now, the assessment, they have a table they have to analyze, and with the patterns too, it's, the patterns are presented in different ways, and
Yeah.
one of the ways is in a table.
That magic number thing.
Yeah.
I noticed also in that unit, which I'm glad that they bring to teachers' attention, is about the growing patterns
Are more difficult for kids to understand, because not only do they have to look at it, they have to make a generalization, and that means almost looking at, I'm thinking with some of these, especially the growing, they have to have that more firm number sense too.
Well, they have to understand what the rule is. And I
Right.
think that's the key, is what's the rule?
What's the rule?
What's the
Yeah.
rule? Because the rule will stay constant in
Right.
the growing pattern.
And understanding that, I think that I can already foresee that might be a challenge for some of them.
Yeah, I think that's why we have to model that, the thinking, the describing, and the description of the pattern.
Anna Maria, you were going to say something.
Well, I was just saying, you can see those higher order thinking skills here, because they're not just identifying, which they would have done in the lower grade levels, but now they're also creating it.
Right.
And different manifestations of it, so not just
Exactly.
using shapes, but using other objects. And I love what Mitzi was saying about the physical piece, the clapping, and seeing patterns in its different manifestations, because when we go through the WIDA language goals, we're going to see that in their can-dos, the lower level are able to use the physical objects, so they can all do that. So we need to build on that and use that throughout the lesson so that they can engage in the content.
Why don't we look at the vertical alignment, since that's seeming where we're going, about what we need to get to and what we already did.
Okay. Who developed?
Who created the vertical alignment?
Ms. Sachs? Okay.
So I was doing the vertical alignment. One thing I noticed that the vocabulary is fairly similar across, first, second, and third. In first grade, they begin with, recognizing a pattern, and the simplest part of it is repeating the pattern, but they have to recognize and state the core of a pattern. That doesn't appear again in second grade. When in second grade, they are facing more of that growing patterns. They have to analyze the patterns. That to me was the big idea of second grade, was analyzing those repeating and growing patterns. So, and having to know how to extend them. And then in third grade, they have to be able to create an arithmetic number pattern. And they have to recognize in a geometric pattern the transformation of a figure. So those flips and turns and being able
The
to
side,
visualize
slide,
that.
and
And with the arithmetic to describe the rule, is it plus 24 or minus 10? What is that?
That's
Arithmetic
continually
pattern.
repeating itself,
so that's why it's key when you're doing growing patterns to talk about what's the rule of the pattern,
right.
because that will help build that piece for third grade.
So why don't we look at the SOL release test items and our assessment?
Which one first? The
We can look at the unit.
Oh, that's all released.
Whichever you guys want. There we go.
Maybe that's what Mrs. Rivera and I, we were looking at, I think, a 2010, it was our 2010 released math, third grade math SOL test. And we went through the entire test and picked out all the different types of stems and questions that, might be possible on a third grade SOL test. And so these are the ones we've included.
And
There.
something that popped out was, the different combinations of one shape and one color. Once again, they used tables, and extending it, what would be the next 3 numbers. So, they really have to not only identify the rule, but then be able to apply it.
I look at the word decrease.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember use that word on ours, on second grade.
They have to.
Yeah, I don't remember. So that's something for us to maybe pop in.
Yes.
Right. When we
Yeah.
look at the
Because I don't
vocabulary
remember
words.
ever
Decrease,
using the word
decreasing.
decrease.
For a rule, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Can
what I
we
was-
add that to our
okay.
vocabulary?
So that's a frightening one for me to
Rule and
see the word decrease.
Yeah.
We've never used that in any of what we've been doing all year.
Decrease.
We
Yeah,
talk about
decrease.
more and we talk about less, but we've never, that word is-
Increase and decrease. That would be good
Yes,
vocabulary to add. You're right, Mitzi, I agree.
That
That's
word
true.
just-
Okay, we'll add it. Okay,
Some of my kids won't be able to say decrease
okay.
if this pattern continues.
You want to go to the
The,
assessment?
Yes.
So can I just say one
Of
thing?
course.
It's about the guide, it talks also about predicting, being able to predict. And we talk about
Right.
that so much in language arts based on the evidence. So the evidence here is, whatever the series of shapes, whether it's increasing. So also like lending itself to predicting what's going to happen next based on the evidence.
If you do know the word prediction from language arts,
Interesting.
that'd be good.
Connection.
That'd be good.
We might actually want to add that to the vocabulary list.
Prediction
too.
and.
Oh, it's there, actually.
I put it
Increase
there.
prediction
You
and
did put
decrease.
it there?
Yes,
Why don't we
it's
look at the
something-
vocabulary list to make sure we got
Okay.
it?
It's there.
All right, so decrease.
Yeah. And can we go ahead and add increase too, since we're
Yeah.
using the one word?
That's plenty. And then we
I
did
added
rule.
a few at
Predict.
the end
Rule.
based on the assessment as well. The
Rule.
increase and increase is good.
Great.
When I add that, what is
And I
the
like what
rule?
Anna Maria was saying about connecting it with our language arts standards of what do you predict and what's the evidence. I think that's really valuable.
So we can even add the stem of, look at this pattern, what is your prediction of what the next spaces would be? Or the next 3 spaces would be, or 5
How do you know?
spaces.
How do you know?
How do you know? Yeah.
What's your, oops. What is your prediction?
Is that the same
What
as
it-
the one with if the pattern continues, what will be the total price?
It's
Are they
using,
almost?
it's very similar, but it's just
Similar,
using
yeah.
the word prediction.
Oh, yeah, we have it in the vocabulary.
I'm going to be put in parentheses. Okay. All right.
And then
They
have it,
say if the pattern continues
And
to.
then how do you know?
Following, so the opposite is if the pattern continues following the same rule as opposed to decreasing. So the same is going up,
Oh.
increasing, because I don't see them use
Okay, say, I'm just,
Oh,
is
it could.
increase.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we
that
go.
good? You like that, Mitzi?
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense.
good point, Mitzi.
Thank you.
Yep, all said. Okay.
Why don't we look at the unit assessment?
Okay, let me say first.
Mm.
I'll have to.
You take a good look at
Oh,
this.
no.
Uh-oh.
Oh, fiddle faddle.
Just save as with a 1 at the end.
Yes.
Yes.
We'll
I
delete
know.
the person.
I remember. Reality.
There you go.
We go with number 1.
Okay.
Number 1 and number 2.
Number
Number
I know.
6.
All right.
What will it be?
This is what you were talking about, Beth, the table.
Oh, yeah.
That 6 to that 10, they have to.
And then look at that, 6, that means that's inferencing. We're talking about, Anna was saying prediction, right there's drawing conclusion and inferencing
I
too.
love it.
So they're
Making
going to
an
really
inference.
have to learn how to develop strategies for not only marking what the pattern is, but then also to continue that pattern.
So that, I remember last year when we did this with this assessment, that this 6 and then 10 kind of threw us all for a loop. I don't, threw some of our kids for a loop, I remember. So they're like, oh no, what happened 7, 8, 9? And having the kids realize, what do you do when that happens?
That is introduced in the
Investigation.
investigations with some building of houses.
Oh, I remember that
That's
lesson.
so hard to
Yep.
get across in my years. As the years moved on, I got a better understanding of how to explain it to the kids.
So
Building.
when we start
Yeah.
framing, remember that lesson. That'll be crucial for us to make sure we include.
Something that I see that's, I think is going to be difficult, not only applying it and putting it in here, but the question, how did you figure it out? Like, having our kids explain their thinking
Right, yeah.
is very difficult.
So that's why.
Incorporating more writing too.
Yeah, it's going to have to be a
And
lot
then
of writing.
also, there's another step too, there's like 3 steps to this. That
Yeah.
1 and 2, 1 is filling in the chart, 2 is that one that you were talking about. But the third one is reading the
Reading the
chart.
chart, yeah.
Because day 4, there is this many, but then they also have to read the chart of the day is missing, so they have to look for the amount and try to figure out the day. So it's really
have to
having
be
that knowledge
flexible.
of being comfortable with the chart, which is
Right.
what we talked about in the graphing unit, where we knew that they had problems with that. So reading the chart both ways, not just from one column, but from both columns.
Yeah, like the bar graph, the vertical and the horizontal,
Yeah.
same thing.
I think the good thing about showing how you figure that out is because you can use a picture. Because you can draw 5 things, keep going up, or you just do 5, 10, 15 and show that that's how you counted it.
This is it.
I think building on that concrete is really going to be essential, because it is difficult for them to skip to that, but if they can visually see it and manipulate it, I think it's going to really help
A
them
lot
to
of practice and then
process
drawing
it.
it out,
Yeah.
like Mitzi said,
And-
go from that physical to the drawing,
Absolutely.
and then figuring out how to figure it out, and with all those missing steps.
abstract.
I remember last year
Very
though.
developmental, isn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Let's look at problem number 2.
It works though. Let us not worry before, because
I-
it's worked over the years. They've
Not your
gotten
heart be
it. So let's
troubled.
Yep.
I know.
Which is, this is what they wanted us to do, is to connect the skip counting. And there's what Brooke was talking about, the decrease.
The decreasing one, that's what I noticed it. 'Cause a lot of, it's like subtraction gets forgotten, sometimes going backwards gets forgotten too.
Right.
And also like number 2, starting with 14, it isn't like starting with number 1 or number 2, it's starting with this number, this obscure number in the middle here and going on, it's not.
And look at the language, where
Yes.
it's saying, counting by twos to 30.
I know,
Oh,
counting
that's
by
language
2s to
there.
30.
Okay, so they need, and, yeah, with 2 too. I mean,
Yeah.
it can be very confusing for them.
It is.
So I really think just using that language, you know,
Right.
and having the frames.
And also, I think not just even orally using it, but having it written like this up on the board.
written. And when we're counting to something, you know, using that TPR, that it's not always going to say add, you know.
Yep.
Or more. It could be 230.
This is it.
So
That's a new question.
Yeah.
it is.
Starting
Yeah.
with it wasn't starting with 14.
Yeah.
When I saw that, it came, that's the first time seeing it like that. The past ones, the block 9.
Can
But
we-
they're coming with a new way of saying it.
Can we look at how problem 4 would be scored? Because
Problem 2?
I'm one,
Or problem
problem 4, the repeating pattern with triangles and circles. I'm just wondering what we're looking for. Answers will vary. Whoops.
Where is it?
There we go, it's up there.
Okay.
So they have to include at least 2 complete repeats.
It's either they got it or not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's pretty simple.
That's really something from kindergarten.
Yeah, that's not going to be as challenging.
No, that's not.
Okay.
Okay.
Let the repeating pattern, triangles and
All right.
circles.
So we're okay with
That would have
those?
been different if they said create a growing pattern.
Yeah.
That would have been different, but this is actually something that they should be familiar with from kindergarten.
So you just have to create a pattern and keep it
But
going.
with
Yeah, that's
triangles and
But they,
circles.
yeah, they have certain attributes that they have to make
Should have
sure
had a
that
guide.
it
Where do they
has.
That it
stop?
contain, yeah, triangles.
So it's bringing the geometric shapes, the geometric
Yeah.
patterns.
Right. Begin there.
Where do they stop in a question like that?
End of the line.
Create the pattern, yeah.
End of the line, there's a nice bold line, draw it there, and you're done.
It's like a song.
I noticed that word numerals, maybe if we could just integrate that with numbers and numerals so that
Oh,
that
yeah,
doesn't throw them
numerals.
off.
Judy can use
too.
that.
Just
Judy can
Digit
use that
numbers.
as
interchangeably.
we can ask Judy to use that as one of her
Mystery word.
Mystery word.
Ah,
you know.
Digit, number, numerals.
Yeah, she did digit already.
Yeah.
I included that when we go to our We That Can Do goals, because that's more of a level 4 where, you know, they know number, but when you start saying numerals, digits, that's
Oh my
now a
gosh.
higher level skill.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's why I specifically put numeral in the vocab list,
I think that was
so
smart.
that they can,
Practice
Being
that.
aware
they
of
become
it.
more fluent with
Right.
Comfortable with
those
that language,
words.
yeah.
So
Okay.
let's scroll down to problem 5.
Oh, that's
Okay.
easy. Okay,
Oh,
those
yeah,
are
they
good.
can.
All right, we're good with
Okay.
those.
So then now
Oh,
it's
and this is like a review of what we've been doing. Remember, the problem that we'll probably have is the subtraction ones. Because we said that that's where we were weak on and we
These are a
wanted
lot of
to.
near
So you've been
doubles.
doing it
They're
all
near
over.
doubles, good point.
Yeah,
They
seeing
haven't
vertically,
seen 'em vertically too
horizontally and
often.
vertically. You need to
So that might be
expose into both.
that spiral view before you start your math block.
That's been an area of difficulty for upper grades. We've talked about, we've seen a difference with students being able to add and subtract vertically versus horizontally. And that
Which
gives
one's more difficult for them, horizontally? or-
Horizontal, I think.
Horizontally?
the horizontal.
Horizontally?
The horizontal. So, because you have to line them up.
Oh, that's right.
Because we've
Place
seen,
value.
we've seen on some of the unit tests where kids have done very well with subtraction when it was already set up for them vertically, but the same subtraction with horizontal, kids did not get the questions correct.
Wow.
So it's just a difference in
Because it's place
spatial.
value.
Yeah,
value.
spatial.
Yep.
Wow. Fascinating.
I did not have thought that would be.
That would be so,
It just said, well, one of our observations, I think it was fourth grade, that they noticed that when we were
That's
looking at
place
that.
value.
And it's large
That's
numbers.
interesting.
There's a
too.
stark difference between how kids perform with vertical versus horizontal.
because you got to do a lot of horizontal then.
And it goes back to place value.
When I
Yeah.
see
Oh, yeah,
the
you're right.
vertical subtraction, I always get scared because I'm saying that's renaming.
Regrouping.
Regrouping.
Yeah.
So we're just to go ahead and teach it, 12 take away 5. Do not introduce
Not yet. That's
anything,
later.
No.
right? Just
The
go
idea of
ahead and do 12.
regrouping or anything.
Yeah.
Because you wouldn't
Huh?
regroup with that
Yeah, you
one,
can't
though.
regroup with that.
You wouldn't, because they should know, I think it goes back to what
doubles.
Brooke said, it's the
Near
near
doubles.
doubles, which is what you guys have been pushing.
Right.
But we said we've been focusing more on it with addition than subtraction. So that's why we wanted to add it
because you
to our
can't
review,
Make a connection.
you know?
And it's something with that, because I know when I looked at the answers, how they have the 7, that's, I'm talking about the vertical one. Take away 5, the 7 is placed under the one's place. And that's something we need to let them be aware. It's important.
But
They
you-
didn't have the
not
answer?
Not necessarily at this level.
Because when I
Don't have to.
scroll down and look at the answer, they have it right there placed under the.
Where?
I think it's
Further
important
down.
to do it, keep going. From now, keep going. So that when it comes to that
Oh, I
time,
see
see,
what
they
you're
have it
saying.
strategically placed right there under it. So that when we go to renaming, and we're going to show them that 1's place, 10's place, it's already there with them. But see how they have it placed?
Yeah.
But here they're not showing how they got the answers and they call it near doubles. Do we want them?
But would you want them to have a 7 under the 1? Over on I think it
No, you're
matters.
right.
I think it
Good-
matters personally.
Going forward.
Good
That
habits.
The 7 should not be over at the 1. I
It won't be
think
counted wrong, it's just in the instruction.
Right, it's not wrong. It's
Yeah.
just for later on.
Okay. Going back up?
So we were on part B.
Oh.
Oh, wow,
Okay,
so
so
you
this
have to
is your-
identify the pattern, what type of pattern it is then.
Finding the rule, and we oftentimes see that's what the question goes back to the release questions on the SOL. We'll have to identify the rule.
Identify the rule?
Yeah.
Should put that in the plan, identify the rule.
And they're in word form.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, they're in words, they're not
N plus 5, you know.
counting by
I
tens,
remember
counting by
when we
five.
did the test with greater than and less than, that's the part.
Yes, that
When it
messed
was
them
in
up.
word form,
Yeah.
it bothered them.
And identify the number that comes
Go
next.
to the back.
That's applying it.
What's 3?
Growing pattern.
Which of these is a growing pattern?
Oh, wow.
My goodness.
This is
Look at
new.
B.
I don't
Yes,
remember
that's
this from
new.
last year.
Yeah.
This is new.
Oh.
That's a good question.
That's a hard question.
That's a good question.
Why do you say it's a good question,
Exactly.
Teresa?
It is a good question.
Why do you say it's a good question, Teresa?
Because they also put
Symbols.
repeating pattern in there with
Right.
numbers.
So they really have to be solid on the
So, I
difference
mean,
between the
Yeah,
two.
they have to understand the difference.
I think we should add it as a stem. I know this is a growing pattern because. I know this is a repeating
agree.
pattern
That's a good
because.
idea.
Yep.
Is it A?
I mean, as a frame, sorry.
Oh, no, it's
No, it's C.
No. It's C.
What?
So I know this is a growing pattern
9 plus
because.
3 plus 3.
And then I know this is a repeating pattern because.
No fiddle.
It's,
What happened?
you got it.
Messing with you today.
It is. Repeating.
It's that sensitive mouse pad.
What Mr. Gefeller said about identifying the rule, could that be put somewhere that we
Right
have,
here.
although we
I got-
have it?
I have it. What is the rule?
What is the rule? Okay.
What is the
editor.
rule?
Oh.
We could make a sentence stem
I think it'd be
saying, my
definitely-
rule is,
Yes.
The rule.
that'll help you to remember it better.
Yeah.
My rule is.
Okay. Do that later on.
Let's guess my rule.
Yeah,
That's
I
what
was just
took up-
thinking that you.
I thought guess my rule was in
That's
this
really good
unit.
to
That's why I
extend
took
it.
this up.
Okay.
This is the
There's a guess my pattern.
Yeah. I thought guess my rule.
I guess my rules with the geometric.
Sonia, why don't we keep going so we can
Okay.
The geometric.
look at the
attributes.
next one?
Okay, 4 and 5. There's pattern for questions 4 and 5.
I don't like the pictures. It like plays with your eyes.
It does.
They should have just.
Oh my gosh, yeah. It
It
took me
really
a moment to
plays with
realize
your
it was a
eyes.
man and a woman.
Yeah.
You gotta look at it really carefully, because some
hurts
kids
my
are not
eyes.
gonna see it, to differentiate with the little man stuck in between it all.
But he's gonna suck.
That's where you gotta look so carefully at it.
Yeah.
This is when I look at something like this, I always think about readers, kids who struggle with reading and being able to really pay attention to the word. And here you have to pay so close attention to the symbol, because it's if you start looking at like an optical illusion, you look at it too much. It's that spatial thing.
But look at number 5, they even ask.
Yeah.
It goes back to the,
Growing pattern.
am I a growing or a repeating pattern? So it was good we added that. Let's scoot down.
I think that's it.
Is that all?
Okay, teacher notes. It's short.
Alright.
That is short.
It's not a long test at all.
No.
We don't
Okay.
have a long time to teach it.
We have 3 weeks, 16 days. Or 16 days.
We're a
16
little bit
weeks.
behind now
Anyways,
because.
we better be able to teach them that.
Okay.
So moving, let's look at
But they
the
still kept
skills
the same
needed for this
timeline.
unit.
If we did it.
Okay.
Or,
Why don't we look at the WIDA
WIDA can-do?
can-dos? Yeah.
Here they are.
So for the level 1, I think the key takeaway here is that using real-life objects is a WIDA can-do skill that you can do from 1 to 5. So the point is to really use those real-life objects to help bridge to the content. And then what Mitzi was talking about using TPR, well, that's a level 1 skill. It's a can-do skill, so we want to make sure we include that so that we can help them engage in the content. And then the visual supports, of course, are essential, but particularly for these level 1s and 2s. Level 1s, we also have to consider that they can follow one-step directions, right? But then when we have these multi-step problems, that's why it's wonderful when we build those anchor charts with the steps. So we want to keep that in mind. And then we've done this with the cognates using their first language to fill in the gaps in English.
There's vocabulary cards that I put out there into the unit, and it has Spanish and English for the vocabulary, and they have specific vocabulary for patterns, so it's out there.
Ms. Machowski, can I make a request for you to give the cognates
I was-
a little before so that
I'm gonna do it for our framing.
You can take that?
Yes, because
Okay.
it really does help, and they interact, and it really engages them. So looking at you'll see the repeating things here, real life objects, even when you're comparing bigger, smaller, darker, lighter, varied shapes. And then they're able to sequence when you're getting to the level 3. They can classify based on oral descriptions. We want to build those listening skills too. And comparing and contrasting is now a level 4 skill. They can compare and contrast based on physical attributes. Can our level 1s do that? No, they need more support.
That's what you're
So
thinking.
we're asking them to compare and contrast
growing
objects.
past. And also,
So think of it as a level 4 skill, and we really need to scaffold with the TPR and the anchor.
you're totally
charts
right,
and
Ayla. I'm just
cognates.
thinking about it, because a lot of this is compare, contrasting, growing, and repeating patterns. That's like a crux of this unit.
Exactly. So that was like one of the ahas that I had when
Yeah.
I was doing this. And then we talked about distinguishing between general and specific language. That's where they know number, but they don't necessarily know numeral and digit. And that's what throws them off on the assessments, because you think, oh, number is so close to numeral. But it's really, it throws them off. So just to keep that in mind. And then as we get to the higher levels, and it's much easier for them to engage in that content, the content language.
But before we go on to the next step, I think we need to talk about how long we want for this unit because we are behind, and because they did change it. They said the end of the unit in the new unit guide would be the 25th of February. So do we still want to stick to that with the 25th as far as now, hoping we don't have any more snow days?
Yeah. Looking at next week, though.
So that would be the day that we would give the unit test. That is a
February 25th?
Tuesday, February 25th.
Okay.
Is everybody in agreement with that?
Starting then. Okay, so when are we saying, starting what day then?
What day are we
February?
planning on starting this?
The 5th.
Fifth.
The 5th, so February 5th to the 25th?
And how many weeks is
Mm.
okay.
2.5.
That's not a long time.
No, that's too,
Can we push it
It's
to the
And
next
almost
then
week?
and we got no
do
school
you
on
want to
President's
change it to
Day,
the
too.
28th? So we can.
Yes, I'd
And then our next
Yeah, that would be
We got no school on President's Day.
What will that do
too.
to the rest of the units of the year? Will
They have days.
What's the
like
word?
they-
Catch-up days.
They do.
So we're saying the 25th or the 27th?
I'm saying the 28th for the test. And then can you put in the part with the assessment, you'll see where it has, keep scrolling down, right there.
Oh,
Right there. Can we change that to the 28th? So that give us a better idea of,
right.
That's good.
That's good?
Yeah, that was.
So let's look at our skills needed.
Excuse me.
Concept. Oh, shoot.
I think they're hidden.
They're
It
hidden.
might be underneath, yeah.
Okay.
So the assessment box should be down there.
Maybe, no? Where are
I think
they?
it's under the concept sequence box.
Yeah, just move the, change that to our skills and then we can make
Yeah,
another
I'll do
box
that.
underneath.
That's easier, yeah.
Underneath.
That makes a lot of sense.
There you go.
Okay.
Skip counting.
It was right here, skip counting.
Skip counting by 2s, 5s, and 10s.
Yep.
Well, how to build a repeating pattern.
Directions. Both ways, both directions. Oh, both increase, decrease.
Decreasing, yeah.
Yep, increasing.
That's not new.
I did not see any skip counting by 3s on the test.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, there
5,
was.
10.
There was?
It's growing.
Oh, it's a growing pattern, 9
that's
plus
skip
12
counting,
plus.
isn't
But that's
it?
still skip counting, so by 3s as well.
I don't think we have 3 in.
Is that
You're
the
only
second?
second
responsible
grade.
for
2,
2s,
5s,
5s,
and
and
10.
10s.
But on the test, it's like 9
But
plus 12.
the answer,
Yeah,
The
but-
thing with that is they're looking for what the rule of the pattern is.
So
The
it's a
rule
grow-
of the pattern is it's growing by 3s.
Okay.
So that's what it's
So
leading
they don't
to.
necessarily need that.
But they wouldn't necessarily need to skip count by
By
3.
three,
They
okay.
identify that the rule is by 3.
Mhm.
And they could use addition strategies to
Yeah.
predict the next.
Adding on 3 more. How many more
Thank
did you
you.
add? How many more did you add on?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if predicting out the, because did they do that in first grade? Predicted?
Extending a pattern?
They do that in kindergarten.
They do what
Yeah,
comes
the
next.
big what comes
Yeah.
next. They don't want to-
Yeah. So you could say they're extending a pattern by 1 or 2. And they also,
They need to identify a repeating
Identify
pattern
them.
versus a
That's
growing
it.
pattern.
Mhm.
They need to know, go, I'm sorry.
They need to be able to create
Mhm.
Mhm.
Need their addition and subtraction facts up to 20.
Yeah.
yeah. Vertically and horizontally.
Vertically and
Mhm.
vertically and horizontally.
But that's even the rules plus 2 minus.
And they're doubles.
Yeah.
and they're
Understand
doubles.
doubles and near
And they're doubles, they're near doubles.
Mhm.
You also need to analyze numerical and geometric patterns.
Mhm. how would we say the one where they have to go back, realize that it's decreasing?
Decreasing. We've got
How
that
would we
one.
say that one?
Yeah.
About predictions.
You have to be able to read a chart
Oh,
fluently.
yes.
I would even say to use and
Read, use.
it.
Anal-
Mitzi, we didn't talk about
Yeah,
your
that
question.
one.
Would, you said maybe if we add decreases, so identify repeating patterns versus growing patterns, and then put something in there about identify reducing or decreasing patterns?
Identify whether the pattern is decreasing or increasing?
Maybe
Oh,
not
yeah, 'cause we
whether,
said
but,
skip counting. We didn't say
Yes,
that.
it does.
Yeah, like I said, skin talent fluently, both increasing and decreasing.
okay.
So that up top.
What about what Mitzi was talking about with that gap? So like in the like
Like when it went from
goes
6
from
to
6
10.
to 10. So you know, not even predicting what
You said
the-
inferring.
and based on
That's
what
extending
the
a
rule
pattern.
is or the pattern.
extending.
So when they have to go from day 6 to day 10.
That's extending a pattern.
That's what I was thinking, a system of note-taking, how, I don't
That's
know,
reading a
some
chart.
way, yeah, to read a chart, but also of recording the rule in a way that they could use it to predict, make a prediction.
Because it's
It's
kind of
almost like
extending the
identifying
pattern,
what's
but they have to
missing.
infer that they have to continue it on their
They
own.
have to.
They have to identify
get
what's
here-
missing, which days are missing.
We have to build that bridge, how to get from this number to, you know, a future
Even when it's not given to you.
when it's not given to you. I saw a lot of struggles with that
Yes.
last year, right, Mitzi? Right.
Parting the rule to infer what's missing in order to be able to extend a pattern.
The one right above came
Yeah.
for and for and.
What?
Oh, yeah, language arts words in there.
Language, period.
It is a lot
I
of
was trying
language on
to
this test.
compliment what everyone said.
It's interesting, Brooke was just saying there is a lot of language on this test, and we just had that same conversation in first grade. Their next assessment has a lot of language. How important that is.
Anything else you think we should add, you guys?
This says recognize the same pattern in different manifestations.
That makes sense. That was that question you like on that test, the one that you thought was good, because they're all repeating patterns except the one growing pattern. So recognizing that a repeating pattern can be shapes or weird symbols or numbers. That's what you just talked about. Yep.
Yeah, in the standard, it talks about recognizing the patterns in its different manifestations. Hence, using all those different objects. She's like,
We have 3 minutes.
I don't know how to spell that word, man. I need
It's
some mirror.
M-A-N-I.
N-I-F-E-S-T,
Start over.
M-A-N,
M-A-N, okay.
I-F,
I-F,
E-S-T,
E-S-T,
A-T.
I-O-N-S. Okay. I need some mirror.
Oh, I really-
So
You can do
let's
it.
spend the last 3 minutes and just talk about our plan for our next meeting, which is the framing meeting, and what we'll do to prepare for that.
Well, we need to do our concept sequence first.
Right.
Mhm.
We need to do that so we can make sure that we know what we want to teach first
Mhm.
and move on. Sonia, you're getting really good at this.
I know my way around a keyboard.
Practice makes perfect.
I'm better with a Mac, but I can deal with Word when I have to.
So when are we framing?
Fourth?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Oops, yeah, save.
I think what would be the best thing is like what we did the last time, if everybody would look over the resources first, so we could quickly do the concept sequence, and then we can easily say, oh, that's in this, that one, here's a good lesson for it out of here. The unit guide, it tells you, I'll tell you what Math Connects book it gives.
Chapter 2,
Chapter 2,
Yeah, chapter 2.
and then
Math Investigations, Unit 5.
Unit 5.
and then look at the ESS lessons and the supplemental lessons that were sent in the,
Those were good.
the email. They were some good ones
They were
in
good.
there.
And they're on the
Yeah.
folder, in the folder.
Yeah. So if we come looking at all those like we did the last time with the geometry unit, we could do that real quick first, and then we can easily pick out what lessons we wanted.
And then the calendar is a good guide as well.
I forgot about the calendar.
Yeah.
Will we want to do a smaller formative assessment mid-unit, or are you going to just use the end-of-unit assessment?
I think in this case, it
I
would be a
think we're
bad
gonna
idea.
We
So-
usually talk about that when
Yeah, the
we
concepts.
do
Do
the
that.
concepts. We figure out,
I think we're going to need to.
yeah.
Beth, you're good with the Debbie Diller book, too.
Oh, I forgot about the
I
Debbie
forgot
Diller
Debbie
book,
Diller.
too. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I
Great.
thought of it
Especially-
immediately.
There's a lot of good
Examples
ones
of
in
I know,
this
In the
one.
AMC, too.
In here,
But I do like that, it's so hands-on, and you can look at the other ones.
This one
we've
has
been
hands.
using for
Can we
That's
have,
what I was gonna
can we
say.
have one person be the guru for the Debbie Diller? Or two people, anybody?
I'll do it. I'll do it with Beth.
And one person be the guru for investigations? One person be the guru for Math Connects?
I can do Math Connect.
Thank you, Lucy. And then, how about the AMC
Kathy.
materials? You'll do that?
Kathy Richardson.
The Kathy Richardson?
And I'll help her with the, because I've been using that for intervention and the math.
And
so I can look
who would be, or can everybody look at the ESS lessons and the ones given in the email? Can we all look at that?
I would not be here. I will not be here next Tuesday. I'll be in a class. Otherwise, I would take my hand up to do something.
Well, thank you.
Well, you already had it.
Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, because I'm gonna have to look and. Oh, yeah. Everybody to go around.
You're on your best behavior.
No, we were